The Hong Kong University of Science and Technology Amendment Bill 2023. Members' motion with no legislative effect. Honourable Holden CHOW will move a motion on strengthening child minding services. 3 members will move amendments to the motion. This council will proceed to a joint debate on the motion and the amendments. Later, I'll first call upon Mr. Holden CHOW to speak and move the motion. Then I'll call upon Mr. Dr. Hoey Lee, Mr. Wai-keung, and Mr. Kenneth LEUNG to speak in sequence, but they may not move the amendments at this stage. The joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak, please press the request to speak button. And I'll call upon Mr. Holden CHOW to speak on and move the motion. President, I move that the motion as printed on the agenda be passed. With our economic development, the structure of our families is different. We have young parents and we have dual income families. They both need to work, but not every family can afford to hire a foreign domestic helper who will stay home to take care of their children. That is a long-standing question. Gripping a lot of families. When we visit our constituents in the district, we have received inquiries from a lot of parents as to where they can find resources to help them. Let me give you an overview. First, the number of capacities from newborn to 2-year-olds. There is very little service available. Let me give you some information. In 2022, for childcare service for those below the age of 3, we have about 37,000 places. From newborn to 2-year-olds, the number of places are 2,027. So less than 10% is pathetically few. Well, even with available places, what's the distribution among the different districts? The distribution itself is not even. According to the information we have from the government, for Kowloon City and Eastern, we have 300 or so and 250. For Tai Po and Tuen Mun, that is my constituency, there are a lot of young families. There is a huge demand, but there are only 14 and 64 places. For Tuen Mun, only 64 places, but we have 5,763 young children. So it's 1 to 90. So 90 young children will fight for one place. So you see there is an acute shortage of childcare places for young children. Next, we turn to subvented services. Childcare centers of the Social Welfare Department. Even if you can find the service, you have to pay through your nose. For those between the age of 2 and 3, you will have to pay at least 3,000. Below the age of 2, you have to pay over $5,000 on average. So it's rather expensive. We now move on to older children. They may go to subvented childcare services under the SWD. There is such service in different districts. But do we have available places? I asked them questions last year in the LEUNG in the past 5 years. For childcare service centers, the number, yes, has increased. It was increased from 150 to about close to 190. But is that enough to meet demand? Let me give you another example. When it comes to childcare service, we come across a lot of cases when grassroots families want to get childcare service so they can go to work and earn another income. we may have childcare centers, but the opening hours are from Monday to Friday. But what about outside Monday to Friday, say Saturdays and public holidays? These childcare centers don't operate. So what happens over public holidays? There is something like enhanced childcare service, but in each district, from the answer I got of the question I asked last year, there are only about 1 to 2 in each district. So we receive calls for assistance, and we went to these childcare centers. But the reply we got was that there was nothing they could do because of manpower shortage. That itself, of course, is a different matter. That might have been resolved by increase in resources. But another issue is whether they could hire suitable help. When we look at childcare centers operating from Monday to Friday, if the hours can be extended to Saturdays or public holidays, then the problems faced by grassroots families will be resolved to a certain extent. For grassroots families, they usually work in the retail sector or restaurants. So they will have to work at the weekend and public holidays. But they don't get any help when they're working Saturdays and at the weekend, and that is a heavy blow to these families. So I move this motion, hoping to see some result in my request for enhancing child minding services. Well, we have the neighborhood nanny, that is the neighborhood support childcare project. I call the remuneration a subsidy because in the eyes of the government, this is not proper work. The rate is about $25. It's below the statutory minimum wage of $40. Yes, I understand that if it's as high as $40, then it becomes proper work, and that will give rise to a number of other issues. But is 20 or so per hour enough to attract more people to join the trade to help? In Tuen Mun, there are 31 these neighborhood nannies. In Kowloon City, about over 500. So there are a lot of young families in Tuen Mun with only about 30 or so neighborhood nannies. If you want to ask people to come to Tuen Mun from another district, then they will have to spend more on transportation. These nannies put in a lot of work from their heart, and you only give them about $20. You don't want the hourly rate to align with statutory minimum wage because you don't want it to become continuous work, but at least you have to do something to increase their remuneration. I pointed out the problems, and now I move on to suggestions. Well, I asked for the remuneration of neighborhood nannies to be increased. Last year, I asked questions in the LEUNG about how many women have to give up their job because of childcare service, and how many parents, upon receiving training, re-enter the job market, and what's the difference in pay. We asked if there is any such data or any supporting services, but we did not get any information from the government because they said that they did not keep any. I see that the government's moving in the right direction. They use school premises to provide enhanced childcare training services. The direction itself is right, but you do need to address the problem of uneven distribution of places. In the new territories, not just Tuen Mun, there are lots of young families moving in. You need to adjust the number of places to districts with a huge demand. Otherwise, it will be the situation when there are surplus places and an acute demand in other districts. I so submit.
And I'll put this question to you, that Mr. Holden Chow's motion be passed. Dr. Simon Lee. Thank you, President. I want to share with you the child care services for those aged, the newborns to 3 years of age. I thank Mr. Holden Chow for his motion. I agree with what he said in the motion. So I propose some feasible ideas on the motion. Let me just bring up a new idea. And this is care and education. From studies, we know newborns to the age of 3 is a key stage of an infant's development. Now we want to focus on the child care for those newborns to those 3-year-olds. It's a unique stage. Now for new parents, what happens to a child at that stage is a key consideration for parents. Now, parents may want to go to work. So for infants at 3 years or younger, the parents may have to get their own parents or nannies to look after the kids. Now, based on what we can see from the Social Welfare Department's website, there are 31 organizations offering childcare centers. They include the independent childcare centers and those affiliated to kindergartens. In total, there are just roughly 1,000 places. That's far from enough to meet the community's needs. Let's look at it in a broader way. There's a drive to boost childcare, that is, education for young children. The new measures have been announced. Now, there will be rules on child care, and there needs to be diverse services in child care. There will be rules on family-based child care to promote such development. The National Health Commission takes the lead. For those aged 3 or below, there will be service standards rules covering a range of services to meet the gap in services. Now, we can learn from other cities with a similar structure, like Singapore. They have education policies for young children. They provide relatively ample support for parents. They have more than 800 full-day childcare centers with government accreditation. The services include those 18 months to 3 years old. The services cover 2 meals, the breakfast and the lunch, afternoon naps, and also showering. These are the services covered. So we can learn from other places. Now, I brought up the term child care for a reason, because it covers not just looking after the child, but also education. And this is a thread that connects the different elements of the debate today. Now, 2 other members will move amendments. Mr. Wai-keung's amendment brings up the point about ethnic minorities and single-parent families. Indeed, these are acute problems. They warrant our attention. Mr. Kenneth LEUNG bring up the point of children below the age of 2. Actually, we are of one mind on this. It's just that I put forward this point from the perspective of education for young children, whereas Mr. Kenneth LEUNG focuses on the data. So in spirit, we actually have a lot in common in terms of our amendments. So at the policy level, we need to offer better daycare for young children below the age of 3. There needs to be better government support to create a more favorable environment in childcare to meet our community's development. I so submit. Mr. Wai-keung. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. First, I thank Mr. Holden CHOW for his motion. This shows the importance attached to child-minding services. This way, we can discuss this matter. Childcare means a lot for unleashing the labor force and also easing the burden on working parents. We have an ultra-low fertility rate. Better childcare services will also help address this problem. Let's look at cost of living. Hong Kong's cost of living is higher than our neighboring regions. That's why both parents have to work. So we're seeing more and more dual income families. You need both parents to work to make ends meet, but someone has to look after the kids. Without that, the parents won't be comfortable about working. First, I need to make one thing clear. We need childcare services. Indeed, that's true. And for employers, they should also let their workers have the time to look after their kids. The workers need time to spend with their kids. When work hours are long, even if childcare is available, the parents will be distracted because the parents will always have the kids in mind. So I want to stress this point about the importance of reasonable work hours. Now, even if you have a mother, a stay-at-home mom, the mother is the carer, then there's the pressure on carers. So better childcare will mean the full-time stay-at-home moms will get to take a breather. I want to commend the government for the school-based after-school care program just launched by the government. Mr. Holden CHOW said he wanted to focus on children before that is younger than primary 1. The fees for home-based child carers are too low, so that's not attractive enough. The government should offer subsidies for these child carers, make the scheme more attractive so that more people will become home-based child carers. Under the supplementary labor scheme, there used to be exclusions for the 26 job posts. These are low-skilled posts. In the future, these workers will see fiercer competition. More people will compete for their jobs. So these people could look at becoming home-based child carers as an option if the pay is better. Now, turning to ethnic minorities, single-parent families, and parents of children with special educational needs. These parents need childcare services because they have a more challenging task at hand. It's more stressful for them, so they need childcare even more than ordinary parents. Finally, I want to say this. There are child carers, child care centers. We're seeing more places. Indeed, the government has put in the work, but the approach needs to be targeted. Can the government be more proactive in gathering the data on service demand? Collect the data and then match those who need the services and those who can provide the services. I so submit. Mr. Kenneth LEUNG. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Child care services are a key part of not just family services, but also a key part of the population policy. I thank Mr. Holden CHOW for his motion. This way, we can have a discussion and members get to share their thoughts on this topic. Quality childcare services can help unleash the female workers as part of the labor force. In the long term, this will also contribute to a more balanced development in population. In my amendment, I mentioned the subsidized childcare places. Right now, we have a dire shortage of such places. This troubles many families that are considering giving birth. Now we have 14 weeks of maternity leave. So for a working woman, she has to consider childcare just a few weeks after giving birth. We do have childcare services for those younger than the age of 4, but there's an acute shortage of places of childcare for those younger than 2 years of age. In 2021, there were roughly 37,000 places for newborns to 3-year-olds. But most places are those for 2 to 3-year-olds. They can go to kindergartens. But for those younger than 2 years old, their places make up barely 6% of the total. The ratio is 1 to 40. One place for every 40 children. In Taipo, for every 271 infant, there's just one place. The distribution is uneven across the city. Even before the child is born, the parents are supposed to get in the queue. If the parents cannot secure a spot, they have to get a relative or a foreign domestic helper to help look after the kid. Now, from the newborn to 6-month-old, that's the most critical stage in a child's development. And then the child has to pick up languages. And that's also a critical time for the development of the sensory faculties. Let's look at Singapore. There's a framework for child care for those younger than 3 years of age. There's a care and teach framework for them. They have performance indicators. There's a established mode of practice. There are ways to assess the development of infants. Parents can get a sense of how their kids are doing. That's why I stress this in my amendment 2. That is, you need both care and education, because this has implications for parents' desire to have kids. I did this survey. Young people are reluctant to have kids. It's not just about money and living space. It's also about child care. People care about quality. They want a good environment for their kids. So there's a need for the government to improve childcare services and preschool education. That way, young families will be more comfortable about having kids. The government has put in tons of resources into childcare. Some years ago, $20 billion was committed for childcare services such as independent childcare centers, but progress has been slow. For independent childcare places, some districts still don't see a single such center. I visited a new center some time ago. The center told me they are short on staff. One child care worker has to look after 6 infants. It's hard enough for parents to look after just one kid. When a worker has to look after 6 infants, that's impossible. The internationally recommended ratio is 1:3 or 1:4. That is 1 worker to 3 or 4 infants. So there's room for improvement. We need updated guidelines so that the childcare centers move with the times. So the government needs to meet the gap of childcare services for those newborns and those younger than 2 years of age. I so submit.
Secretary for Labour and Welfare. Mr. Deputy, I thank Mr. Holden CHOW for his motion on strengthening child-minding services, as well as Dr. Simon Lee, Mr. Kenneth LEUNG, and Mr. Wai-keung for their amendments. It gives us an opportunity to listen to members' views on the issue. The government will listen closely to members' views on the topic. Now, to support parents in childcare, we subsidize a wide range of day childcare services provided by NGOs, including the Child Care Center or CCC services, extended hours services, Neighborhood Support Childcare Projects or NSCCP, that is home-based carers, and after-school care services. These services meet the different needs of parents and children, benefiting working parents, single parents, ethnic minority parents, and parents of children with special education needs. Now, on day childcare centers, CCC or childcare centers offer daycare services for children between 0 and 3 years of age. To enhance day childcare services, we have commissioned 3 new aided standalone CCCs in Shatin, Taipo, and Yuen Long in March 2021 and January and March 2023, providing a total of 290 places. As of March 2023, there were some 36,000 CCC places, 9,000 of which were provided under aided standalone CCC and CCC attached to kindergartens. Over the next 3 years, the Social Welfare Department will commission another 7 aided standalone CCCs in phases to add some 600 more service quotas. Also, the government has allocated additional resources to enhance the manning ratio of qualified child carers in aided CCCs so that children may get better care. The SWD will continue to increase the number of quota places for extended hours services so that more preschool children with needs may receive longer hours of care as the original service units. The Neighborhood Support Childcare Projects, or the NSCCP, or in short, home-based carers. The project offers flexible day childcare services at the community level and encourages mutual help and care in the community. The government provides subsidies to operating units which offer care services at home for children under the age of 9 and group care for children aged between 3 and 9 at service centers. The service bodies are responsible for recruiting and training home-based carers under the project. At present, there are 18 NSCCPs over the territory. As of December last year, there were 1,760 home-based carers offering childcare services under the project. If parents are unable to give proper care to children during after-school hours because of work or other reasons, they can choose the after-school care project. At present, NGOs offer after-school care services to primary students. The services are of a supportive nature and are operated on a self-financing basis with a fee. The fee waiving subsidy scheme under the ASCP offers after-school care services to children from low-income families. Qualifying families may apply for a fee waiving subsidy with the service unit directly. Depending on the type of allowances received by the family under recognized assistance programs run by the government, including financial assistance schemes for students, Working Family Allowance, or CSSA, or the percentage of median monthly domestic household income, applicants will be given a full fee waiver, a half fee reduction, or a one-third fee reduction. Since year 2021 to 22, the government has re-engineered the Mutual Help Child Care Centres, or MHCCCs, to provide after-school care services for preschool children between 3 and 6 years of age, with more social workers and supporting staff to further meet the childcare needs in the community. So far, 13 MHCCCs have undergone re-engineering. The remaining 5 will come online in phases before 2023 and 24. Dr. Simon Lee's amendments touches upon the issue of birth. It involves a wide range of policy portfolios under different bureaus, including the Health Bureau, the Labour and Welfare Bureau, the Home and Youth Affairs Bureau, the Education Bureau, the Civil Service Bureau, the Financial Services and Treasury Bureau, and the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau. The government will continue to implement measures to create a child and family-friendly environment in Hong Kong and offer better support to potential parents, including the provision of assistive reproductive services, increasing the day childcare places, implementing the kindergarten and childcare center fee remission scheme, promoting family-friendly employment measures, implementing 5-day work week in the civil service in phases, offering child tax allowance, promoting breastfeeding, and protecting breastfeeding mothers from discrimination and harassment. Now, through these measures, we hope that we can offer a favorable environment for parents, for potential parents, so that they can plan for their family. The President, I will listen carefully to members' views and reply on them in my closing speech. Thank you, President.
世榮議員。
Mr. Stanley Lee, thank you, Mr. Deputy. I would like to speak on the motion about strengthening child-minding services. I support the motion as well as the amendments. According to a Chinese poem by G.E., it is said that parent birds have to spare a lot of efforts to feed their young birds. Well, even though their parents are to exert all their efforts, they may not know that they have become exhausted. Well, our ancestors have put their observation into this poem. I think it is still true today. Well, in relation to Mr. Holden Chow's motion, I think what he wants to see is that we can provide something good for the people, and it will facilitate the long-term development of our society. We should strengthen the child-minding services. We should provide favorable conditions so that the grassroots families and the middle-class families can benefit, and then women would not be barred from realizing their self-worth as a result of the difficulties in getting child-minding services. According to the UN statistics, we have the lowest birth rate in the world, even when compared with South Korea and Singapore. Well, there are many reasons behind such a low birth rate. I met with the parents, or potential parents at the district level. The high cost of child caring, poor living conditions. Both couples have to work, and they don't have time to look after children. Young people are worried that they are already very busy with their work. They are worried that they don't have time to take care of the children when they do start a family. Now, for the grassroots as well as the middle class, they dare not bring up a family because the living cost is high.
Well, in fact, it usually takes a double income before you can support your living. And many families will have this arrangement, that is, the wife has to take care of the family, and sometimes they even have to work. So they're really exhausted and they cannot enhance themselves. In fact, they have to go through a very unhealthy crisis. And then many potential mothers, they're not getting pregnant because of the pandemic. Now, we have to address the problem. It takes vision on the part of the government to break down the barriers so as to encourage more people to have children. We should also provide a facilitating environment to encourage young couples to have children, and then we can ease the aging trend of the society. First of all, for the grassroots, for the middle class, I think I have received comments from such groups. Some of them are single mothers. They find it very difficult to cope with the mental stress. In the course of bringing up their children, they become very despaired and they have no hope for the future of the children. They find it difficult to take care of their children and to keep a job. They need after-school care. They need tutors to help with the homework of the children. They also need improvements to the living conditions. Perhaps we should grant more resources to NGOs and district organizations so that we can have child care facilities for emergency cases. And then the care teams can also take care of the children on a flexible basis. And then we can take the burden off the shoulders of the mothers. And there are also cases in which mothers have to take care of their own children and take care of their elderly parents. So we must do our utmost to help such mothers. Now, aging is worsening. At the livelihood issue, many parents find it difficult to get child-minding services. It is an urgent task, so I spoke. Thank you. Reverend Kuhn. Mr. Deputy, with the aging of the population, we have a shrinking labor force. It is not good for our economy. We need to release the potential of the female workforce. It is a solution for the shrinking labor force. Many women are more highly educated. They enjoy a higher social status, but then their economic participation rate is still lower than their male counterparts, and then they receive a lower level of wage. In other words, women still find it difficult to choose between work and family. Well, in a family, usually the mother has to take care of the children. It isn't just a matter of a duty of love. In fact, it is not an easy task. They have to take care of the physical needs and emotional needs of the children. It is physically and emotionally taxing. And they have to forego their career development, or they have limited choices for their jobs. Since there is a lack of child-minding services, many people have to have no choice and they have to stay home to take care of the children, and therefore fewer of them are encouraged to work in the labor market. Well, in fact, we have been criticizing the shortage of child-minding services. Yes, the administration has already launched the Neighborhood Support Child Care Project for 14 years. But then the outcome isn't really that good. As far as the manpower ratio is concerned, it varies from district to district, and the number of places available doesn't meet the needs of the people. We have got 1,800 places. For Kowloon City, we have got 515 community nannies. But then there are only 167 children requiring help. In Tuen Mun, there are only 31 home-based child carers. But on the other hand, there are 214 children waiting for a carer to take care of them. So it is a mismatch. Moreover, on an hourly basis, a nanny only gets $25, much lower than the minimum wage. $25 isn't good enough for afternoon tea or the transport fees. So it is not attractive enough, and it is putting off people who may be willing to cross the districts to look after the children. So the administration must expand the service, provide more childcare places, and consider ways to provide service to the mothers after hours and during weekends. I think we should increase the incentive payment for the home-based child carers, make it at least equal to the minimum wage. I think on the one hand, we give recognition to the work of such carers. On the other hand, we can release the potential of such female carers. On the other hand, for the after-school care program, I think the number of places is grossly inadequate. We have got 6,500 places all over the city, serving 340,000 primary school students. In other words, for every 54 students in the age group, only one can get the service. And then the subsidy given is inadequate. In the year 2021-2022, full remission is given to 4,250 of them. But then we have got 80,000 in the age group of 7 to 11 who are poor. In other words, some parents don't get the subsidy and they have to stay home to take care of the children. But it means that without the extra income, the financial position is even tighter for them. So we should provide more places under the after-school care program, and we should provide more subsidies by having full remission or a higher amount of remission of the fees. Schools can also provide space to NGOs so that the government can partner with them. And then in all the primary schools, we can run an after-school care program. In this way, we can have have a large number of additional places at a very low cost. So I spoke, and I support the motion. Mr. Edmund Wong. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. A few weeks ago, we had this discussion that is ways to enhance the birth rate in Hong Kong. I said that people are under huge pressure to raise children. I'm also considering it. I have yet to start a family. Now, in fact, this motion debate is an extension of that previous one. The female labor participation rate is 53.2%, female 64.5%. Men may also take care of young children, but then the wives would usually be taking care of their children. Usually they have to leave the labor force temporarily or even permanently to look after the children. In the year 2021, for young children under the age of 2, there were only 2,027 places, much lower than that of the total number of children born for the relevant year. That is 82,000 of them. For every 40 toddlers, there was one place only. So the supply is hugely inadequate. And yet, what is worse is that there is an uneven distribution of places. For Taipo, only 14 places for those aged below 2. And yet, the number of toddlers under the age of 2, there were 3,800. So it is a matter of 1 for every 270. And even if you get aided childcare service, on average, you still have to pay $5,600 a month. It is very expensive. It is discouraging the households. The Hong Kong CSS carried out a survey concerning the labor participation rate of the grassroots women. for the low-income families, they were asked to fill out the questionnaire. 70% of those interviewed told us that they didn't have any paid employment, and 80% of them didn't have a job, but in fact they were interested to go to work. Unfortunately, they have to take care of their children, and they don't have the skills, and they don't have the educational qualifications required, and so they are barred from joining the labor force. Perhaps we should make it more flexible. We should provide employment support so that women can join the labor force. Other than increasing the number of places at the child care centers in different districts, I know that we can also count on the neighborhood support child care project. Just now, Reverend Kuhn also referred to this arrangement. Generally speaking, we have women who have children to take care of at home, and they also take care of the children of the neighbors. Such home-based child care can also promote good neighborliness. However, the administration would regard the home-based child carers under the Neighborhood Support Child Care Project as voluntary service. What is being offered to them is an hourly wage of $25. As Reverend Kuhn has said, $25 can't buy you an afternoon tea. Well, this is a very meager sum. It is lower than the minimum wage rate, and that's why we have only got 1,800 home-based child carers in Hong Kong. Now, businessmen would say that when the economy is in a poor form, there's no way that we should ask the grassroots to bear the burden together with the administration. I think we should find ways to encourage more people to join the neighborhood project. And we should raise the rate of subsidy. We should raise the amount of incentive payment so that more housewives would be willing to take up the post of home-based child cares, and then we can release their potential. So I spoke in support of the motion and the amendments.
Mr. Chan Kim Bo. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Many families in Hong Kong are double income families. So they don't have the capacity to take care of work and child care at the same time. That's why we need to have more child-minding services to alleviate the pressure on parents. I'm grateful to Mr. Holden Chow for moving the motion, and also for the other movers of amendments. We should aim at providing actual care and not just simply child care. We should increase these resources for child care centers. At present, there are limited CCC places, and usually there's a long waiting list. I recommend the government to set up more CCCs, childcare centers, in appropriate locations so that parents can reorganize their work arrangements. For children aged 0 to 2, the number of aided places is much lower than the overall provision of places for children aged 0 to 3. In 2021, for every 40 children under the age of 2, they would get one aided CCC place. There's a acute shortage of places. The government should come up with a timetable so that parents who would like to have children would find it easier to plan their childcare arrangements. For Tai Po, and the demand is so acute, as was mentioned by the other member. The ratio, there are only 14 places, but there were 3,769 children in the age group. I hope more should be provided to shorten the waiting list. Apart from increasing CCC prices, it's important that we have enough childcare workers. CCWs are important because they are tasked with caring children under their custody. And CCC has to complete the diploma course first. But graduates of these diploma course will choose to become kindergarten teachers generally. Therefore, there's a shortage of childcare workers working in CCCs. Although the qualification requirement is the same between the CCWs and kindergarten teachers, but the pay is very different. So there should be a review of the qualification pay and promotion prospects of CC workers. And these benefits should be at least at par with kindergarten teachers before we can ensure quality of CCWs. And I know that the hospital authority also provide 136 places for child care. They were set up in 2017 and 2023 in 2 centers. I hope that in the future Cheung Kong Lo government building, another 100 places were provided. I hope the government would do this in other government offices so that government employees working in those locations can have access to childcare places. This would, of course, make them more efficient as staff members, and then the children would get proper care. This would be helpful for government to retain talent. Mr. KWOK, thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Holden Chow for moving the amendments and for the other 3 members for moving their amendments. We want to enhance childcare places and alleviate pressure on parents. Some people are unwilling or are unable to have children because of the pressure. As the representative of the education sector in this council, I'm also concerned about the diminishing student population, and many students have to reduce the number of classes offered or even have to close down. Hong Kong is not a family-friendly community. The various childcare costs are very high, and there's a lack of sufficient childcare facilities. This has dampened people's aspiration to have children. The government has announced the new pilot project 1 year for school-based after-school childcare. NGOs will be engaged to provide the services. A total of 3,000 places will be offered. I appreciate the government's decision to subscribe to the school-based concept of childcare. I think this would enable the schools to play a positive role. And this should not just be done in primary schools. Actually, for kindergartens, they are even more suitable for the purpose of providing child care. I hope the government will allow kindergartens to be child care facilities by providing suitable subsidies. And then in accordance with the number of places, that there will be special provision for children. And also, there should be better subvention of not-for-profit childcare centers so as to enhance quality. With better revenue for the schools, that they would have a better future. The schools will have better future. And there are also the home-based child carers. The government should provide or strengthen the training for these carers so that they can take care of the children of whose parents have to work and cannot care for their children. Better childcare services for childcare would not just relieve pressures on parents, but also provide a better incentive to attract women to join the job market. Many women have aspirations in their development of career, and therefore they may not be able to take care of their children at the same time. Therefore, there should be more childcare centers and more places should be all alleviated. This would take away the concern and worries of women so that they can have the ease of mind to join the job market and become part of the labor force. If we have a well-developed childcare centers and then the adoption of family-friendly policies that would enable people to have the right balance between work and family. This would provide incentive for people to have more children, and this will, in the long term, maintain the sustainable development of Hong Kong, both socially and economically. Well, with these remarks, I support the motion and the amendments. Dr. Ngan Men Yu. Mr. Deputy, with changing social circumstances, we have more and more double income families. Many people have to work, both parents have to work. And in Hong Kong, we are famed for long working hours, and sometimes parents have to work at home so that they can only ask someone to take care of the children. That's why we have a very keen demand for childcare center places. There is a shortage of places, and private childcare service is very expensive. If we don't have sufficient places, it would dampen people's desire to have children. There is a big shortage. According to a study in 2022, we have only 12 independent aid CCC providing service to children aged 0 to 3. Altogether, 852 places are provided. If we take into account the total population of 155,000 of children, it's a ratio of 180 to 1, and 99% of them are provided to the working parents. And many parents find it difficult to take care of their children after work. So a school-based after-school childcare will be important. We have 6,033 places, so it's a ratio of 66 to 1. But the distribution of these places is uneven, so it's very difficult for parents. They may have to find a place for their child in another district. There's a lack of proper planning for childcare, so that's why we have a shortage of childcare places. In March, the DAB and the Women's Federation conducted a survey, and 70% of the respondents said that they needed childcare services, but only 10% can have access to such services. For Kwun Tong, take Kwun Tong as an example, most places are located in the eastern part of Kwun Tong. But for KWOK, there are many double income parents, but there is only one. There are only a small number of childcare services. There was a plan to provide one new childcare centers, but the planning took place more than 10 years ago. So it means that it takes more than 10 years to have a new one commissioned. Many mothers are forced to resign and take care of their children, and they will become the an outsider to the job market, it would be difficult for them to rejoin the labor force later. There should be more childcare centers, and that regard should be had through the local children population. The HA has the airport authority has make a good example. A childcare center has been set up at the airport. The government should also learn from this example. There should be more the childcare centers in business areas so as to make it convenient for working parents. At present, in our public housing estates, space will be reserved for operating childcare centers, but not in the business districts. For Kowloon East, according to the government, there's the idea of a CBD2, and there's a project to reposition a government factory building. This presents a good opportunity to offer childcare services to parents in Kowloon East. But the government has been reluctant to provide space for childcare centers in business districts. So I believe we should have more childcare centers in all these child business districts, and then we can address the problem of people reluctant to have children, and at the same time the children will be well taken care of. So I submit.
Mr. Chen Siu-hong. Thank you, President. I speak to thank and support Mr. Holden Chow's motion to strengthen child minding services, and I also support the amendments. Currently, the Social Welfare Department provides support services to parents who can't, who have to go to work, and they have childcare centers and other various support centers. According to information, there are about 50,000 children that needs that service. But in that same period, that there can only be about 30,000 places available. That is about 63%. And it shows that the current supply cannot meet demand. According to the population projection, by 2031, there will be an increasing number of dual income family that needs childcare service. We'll need about 70,000 places to meet demand. The government needs to plan early to put in place supporting measures. To address the urgent issue, other than increasing the number of places, you have to also help them improve their software and hardware. For the manning ratio, quality of services, hardware, and the monitoring of home-based child carers, I have concern. We see a large number of vacancies in the social welfare sector. There may be about 2,000 new registrants on child care service. But the most important thing is to attract new blood and to retain serving members. Opening more service places without manpower support cannot address the demand from dual income families. In relation to the amendments, there is a request to enhance training for home-based child carers and to increase their remuneration. I support them in principle, but if you rely only on these home-based child carers, then it is not enough to meet demand. I ask for the home-based child carers to be enhanced. There should be a registration system with a monitoring mechanism in place. In 2021, our child care home was involved in child abuse cases. It has drawn a lot of attention. We have in the LEUNG a bill on mandatory reporting of child abuse cases. I believe that the reporting mechanism will enhance the confidence of parents. The scope of duty of home-based child carers should be set clear. Using the training for carers for women who have just given birth. I think we can mirror the practice. Gratuity should be offered to get more people to join as child carers. And in the budget of 2022 and 23, there are initiatives to assess its effectiveness, including the level of remuneration. I look forward to the result of the review and a possible implementation of new measures. I expect the voluntary team and the district care team to work together. We may see an increasing number of places. I think that service can still be improved if all government parties work together to address the concern of dual-income families. Ms. Eunice Young, I speak in support of Mr. Chow's motion. I thank him for showing concern about childcare services. He's asked questions on this topic. I also support the amendments of Mr. Hoey Lee, Mr. Wai-keung, and Mr. Kenneth LEUNG. A number of members have spoken strongly about the availability of services. The administration should strengthen these services by expanding the number of places as well as lengthening the service hours. The rationale of childcare services, from information that I have gleaned, is that they will provide services to parents who can't take care of their children because of work. They have daycare centers in childcare center, in the form of childcare centers, neighborhood support childcare project, as well as the after-school care program. I think that's all. Before I had children, I used the ultrasound picture to get in the queue. After I've given birth, I only had to wait for about a few months before I got a place. We try to understand about the details of these services to see if they can really help to free women to go to work. But now I learned that it's mainly releasing grandparents so that they can go to work. Yes, if you can't get a place in these services and centers, then you rely on your family members to take care of the children for you. We need to provide quality service so parents can rest assured that their children are well taken care of. For childcare services for those between the age of 0 and 3, a number of members have spoken about this. Teaching and taking and care are equally important, but now the focus is on care. But we're in 2023. Parents care a lot more about the growth and development of children. Diversified and high-quality services should be provided. We're talking about newborn to the age of 3. When you're 1, you can go to pre-nursery. 2. Between 2 and 3, you can go to nursery, and then at the age of 3, it's kindergarten. So what can be done for those between the under 2? Well, if you want to go to a pre-nursery, the child will have to be at least 1 year old. For babies, they are developing their speech and how to take care of themselves. I don't think the service can meet the needs. So when it comes to education, how can the service meet the needs of children between the age of 0 and 3? I think if they're trained well, then it will be better for them to when they go to kindergarten. Children mature much earlier now. I think you can teach them about society and relationship with their parents. I hope that we can have quality service with sufficient supply. Mr. Chen Pui-leung, from time to time we talk about topics to enhance manpower. We see an increasing number of women working, but a decreasing number for male employees. But in a census in 2021, marital status seems to make a difference. For married women, the labor force participation rate is a lot lower than their male counterparts. That means after getting married, women tend to become homemakers. As a result, there is a huge untapped potential of women labor force. Sometimes they find it difficult to re-enter the job market when their children grow up. We have a dropping fertility rate. Latest survey shows that we have 0.8 in birth rate. A major factor is childcare. In Hong Kong, for daycare, child daycare service, the supply falls short behind demand, especially for services for those between the age of 2 and 2021. For every 40 for 40 children under the age of 2, there is only one place, and there is uneven distribution of service availability. Tai Po, Wang Tai Sin, and Tuen Mun, there is an acute shortage. For Tai Po, 27 children fight for one place. Parents will have to go to a different district to find availability. I agree with the suggestion in Mr. Kenneth Leung and Mr. Hoey Lee that the places of daycare, child care centers should be increased. I would like to talk about manpower shortage. For residential care center, the manning ratio is 1:6. For those between 2 and 3 is 1:11. But for other advanced economies is 1:3 or 4. So we are lagging behind. You need to be very patient when you take care of children, and the younger they are, the more patient and careful you need to be. We need to enhance the manning ratio. I hope that more allowances, more on-the-job training should be provided to attract new blood to address the manpower shortage. Mr. Wai-keung talks about the home-based child carers. There are different organizations in different districts providing similar services. There are volunteers working to help, and the remuneration is very low. They don't live in, and you can just talk to them because you speak the same language. The scheme has been in place for over 40 years, but little is known about it. A lot of parents don't even know about the availability of home-based child carers. In a budget last year, it was announced that there will be a review on the neighborhood support childcare project, including accreditation and training of home-based child carers on top of their remuneration. Now, the review will be completed in the middle of this year. I hope that the allowance will be enhanced to attract more volunteers to become home-based child carers. Enhancing manpower, increasing services will allay the concerns of women, and they can leave their children to be taken care of by someone and re-enter the job market. President, I speak to support Mr. Chow's original motion and the amendments.
Mr. Gary Chan. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Holden Chow for his motion on strengthening child-minding services so that we can put forward our views concerning the topic and also for the government to reply on our concerns. The lack of childcare services is a long-standing issue. People might say that if you don't have time to care for your children, just hire a foreign domestic helper. But not everyone in Hong Kong has the means to hire a FDH. Now, those of us who work in the community often receive requests from our constituents that they want more childcare services so that they can go out to work. Earlier on, the DAB has conducted a survey. The finding is that 80% of the respondents once had their work affected because of child care. Less than 10% of the respondents were able to get a quota place from the existing childcare services. Now, if the government can offer more service places, then more parents can come out to work. Now, since the financial burden is getting heavier, if either of the parents cannot work, it would impose more financial burden on the families. Now, many schools and NGOs are providing childcare services. The idea of home-based child carers, the service is provided by many organizations. Now, according to the SWD, in year 2021 and 22, under the Neighborhood Support Childcare Project, the number of beneficiaries was only 10,829 children. Now, it sounds great, but if you look at the year before, that is year 19 to 20, the number of children benefited was only 10,704. Now, the increase over years was meager. We are just talking about 100 more each year. It shows that despite the popularity of the project, it is expanding at a very slow pace and falls below the need of community. Now, I read an interview conducted by Mr. Holden Chow. Because of the low pay, it is very unattractive for home-based carers. And also, you have to make an advance booking for the service. If there are any emergency, I can't make an advance booking. So home-based carers cannot provide emergency caring services. Now, more resources should be allocated to this project so that more people can benefit from home-based carers. Now, when I was a kid, both of my parents were working. Now, I attended half-day school in kindergarten and primary schools. I couldn't go home after school. So my parents asked my schools to allow me to stay behind after school. Now, for students who need a place to go after school, and yet we don't have sufficient home-based carers, can we ask the schools to take care of them? In the past, there were so many reasons why schools could not do that. However, yesterday, the Chief Secretary for Administration said that he would utilize the $100 million CCF to launch the pilot scheme of school-based after-school care program. Now, this is very good. This is just like what I had when I was a child. So I hope this pilot scheme can be expanded to the whole territory so that needy families can get the service more conveniently without making advanced booking and so on. So this is how we can help parents and unleash the working potential, and then the FTU would not accuse you of importing labours. Now, I speak in support of the motion and the amendments. Mr. Bill Tang. Thank you, President. Yes, I'm from the FTU. I am responding to Mr. Gary Chan's suggestion. Of course, in order to unleash a women labour force, we have to provide childcare services. Now, women are the main carers in families. We want to help them unleash their potential and live the life to the full. Now, a lot of mothers are putting 100% of the time in childcare. At the same time, many women would like to work to utilize what they have learned in schools. And there are lots of ambitious women who would like to fulfill their aspirations in management roles. Now, so of course, we want to unleash the potential of the labor force, and also we want women to live happier and to the full. So this is necessary. Now, the issue is, where will children go after school during holidays and so on? Now, I don't think that we can address the problem by providing after-school care on school days. Now, parents still have to work during Christmas and Easter holidays and Chinese New Year holidays. Now, Hong Kong is a service economy. Take the hotel industry for the example. Now, Mr. Casper Choi told me that a lot of women who are carers of their families are eyeing after the work in hotel industry. Now, the busiest hours in the hotel industry, that is between 8 and 9 a.m. is the time when women are free because their children have gone to school. Now, the hotel industry needs manpower most during Easter and Christmas holidays and also summer holiday. Now, the government is taking a huge step by allocating resources to school to ask them stay open for children. But what about holiday? Well, I'm not nitpicking on the government, but this is how the economy works. Now, employers have empathy for women, for female workers, but they would be reluctant to hire them if women cannot work during holidays. So they would just rather hire overseas or foreign labor or imported labor. So as mentioned by Mr. Casper Choi, the representative of the hotel industry, they want to hire women. So at least schools should stay open from Monday to Saturday and beyond school days to care for children. Now, maybe not statutory or public holidays, but at least Monday to Saturday and summer holiday. Otherwise, we cannot fully unleash the potential of the women labor force. Well, not every employer would accommodate the schedule of women women employee, especially when the government has opened the floodgates of importing labor. Now, this is the last stretch of the mile in terms of poverty alleviation. Under the targeted poverty alleviation strategy, in order to help grassroots families, we have to increase the income of the parents. And to do that, we have to ensure that there is employment opportunity for them. So we have to ensure that the after-school care services provided by schools would go beyond school days. This is very crucial. So let's continue to work on this. Now, I would like to say that most schools' premises belong to the government, and most school teachers are paid for with public money. Now, schools shouldn't be unwilling to help the society. Thank you. Ms. Carmen Can. Thank you, President. I thank Mr. Holden Chow for moving this motion on strengthening child-minding services. According to the CNSD statistics published in June, Hong Kong's birth rate has declined by more than 40% in 30 years. In 1991, every woman gave birth to 1.2 child. In 2022, just 0.7. It is even lower than the UN's figure, that is 0.8. Now, many young mothers told me that there is a serious shortage of childcare services for children below the age of 2. They had to stay away from work for 2 years. So I thank Mr. Holden Chow for moving this motion. According to the study in 2021, the labor force participation rate of women aged between 25 and 54 was only 72.7%. In Singapore, it is 84.7%. Now, if the government can roll out more family-friendly policies to alleviate the burden on mothers, we can unleash the women potential women workforce. Now, I have 3 suggestions. First, we have to increase supply and manage the demand and supply of childcare services in different districts. Now, the Secretary said that as at March this year, there are some 36,000 service places in CCCs. However, according to the Electrical Secretariat's report, there were only 2,027 quota places for children below the age of 2. Now, it is a ratio of 1 to 40. And also, there is an uneven distribution of service quotas in different districts. In 2022, in Wong Tai Sin, the ratio was 1 to 99. That is 99 children for one place. In Taibo, it is 1 to 271. Now, we should consider the specific needs of various districts and allocate resource to enhance service quotas for children under 2. Now, we should establish a registration system for home-based carers in over the territory. We have to identify needy parents as well as the supply to avoid mismatch. This will allow the government to offer the service more accurately. Now, there should be an urgent caring mechanism or urgent care service provided by home-based carers. Now, for districts with a lot of SDUs, the government has launched the pilot scheme of school-based after-school care with some 3,000 places. Now, this is for primary school students. Kindergarten students have different needs. The government should work with kindergartens to draw reference to the after-school care service provided to primary school students and make kindergarten stay open beyond school hours to alleviate caring pressure for parents. And also, we have to enhance the manning ratio. Now, for manning ratios for carers for serving children aged 0 to below 2, it is 1 to 8. Now, in Singapore, it is 1 to 5, and in South Korea, it is 1 to 3. We are lagging behind. Now, the government should review the training mechanism and remuneration package for child carers so as to enhance the manning ratio. Thirdly, we have to enhance the neighborhood support childcare project. Like quota places for CCC, there is an uneven distribution of NSCCP places. Now, the minimum quota is 53. However, in 2021, there were 6 districts with less than 53 carers. However, in Kowloon City, there were a lot. Now, for another district which has high demand, there were only 30 home-based carers. Now, the hourly financial incentive is only $25. It is even lower than the statutory minimum wage. How can we incentivize home-based carers to work across districts? Now, I suggest the government study how we can enhance the remuneration package of financial incentives for home-based carers and also the traffic allowance. Now, child care services are important in terms of unleashing women labor force. Now, I hope the review can be completed as soon as possible, and also by using the $100 million Women Empowerment Fund, we should provide more services to parents, and also we should have a progressive child tax allowance, as suggested by me, to encourage birth and also inject impetus to our labor force. Thank you.
Ms. KWOK. Thank you, President. Children are our future. Child rearing takes not just parents, but also an inclusive and caring community. I thank Mr. Holden Chow for his motion on strengthening child management services and also the amendments from 3 members based on the government's figures. Over the past 30 years, our fertility rate dropped by 40%. The size of our children dropped by 1.2% each year. In 2021, for the first time, it dropped below 1 million. This will mean a shrinking workforce in the future, with major challenges ahead for our economy. Let's look at our workforce for dual-income families. They form the mainstay of our families. In terms of women's labor participation rate, it's been going up in 2016. For unmarried single women, their participation rate is 45.1%. For married women, their participation rate is lower by 21 percentage points. This shows family commitment and a job are competing priorities for women. It's hard for women to juggle family with work. We have an aging society with a falling birth rate. So we should elevate our policy. It's not just about caring for young kids. We need enhancement to children younger than 6 years old, unleash the female workforce. We need to make good use, provide good resources in childcare. So here are my suggestions. First, we need more organizations and more places for childcare. Now, for those newborns and 2-year-olds, you have all kinds of childcare centers and centers attached to kindergartens, etc. Now, for subvented organizations providing childcare for those younger than 2 years of age, there are roughly 1,730 places. In 2022, we had 32,500 young children. Only very few places are there for them. This shows we have a dire shortage of child care places for infants. So we need more bodies offering services and more places. Second, we need to review the service hours of child care centers. At districts, I heard from working parents that the service hours of these centers cannot meet working parents' needs. Roughly 3/4 of childcare centers only offer half-day services. That makes it hard for parents to join full-time work. So I suggest a review of the service hours of childcare service providers. That way, parents can have flexibility in when to pick up and drop off their kids. Third, we need to look at the geographical distribution of services. The median month household income at its lowest. So the childcare services actually make up more than half the median monthly income of the household. But actually, the uptake is rather low. So now you have a mismatch of childcare places and household income. So in the district with the lowest income, you have a lower percentage of female participation. So you need to look at the geographical distribution of services. Now, fourth, I would suggest that we look at the services of the home-based child carers. We need professional carers. We need more such carers. That way you have better support, and we need carers who can meet urgent needs. Education for young kids is important for their growth. They need their parents by their side. So the government needs to respond to the need for more childcare services and boost service quality. We also need diverse childcare places, such as family-friendly workplace arrangements, better childcare services to offer better care. That way, families can play a part in raising their kids, and we need an inclusive community for families. I so submit. Thank you. Mr. Perry Yu. President, I speak in support of Mr. Holden Chow's motion and the amendments from other members. Labor, land, entrepreneurship, and capital, these are the factors of production. We have a shortage of land that holds back our economy. In recent years, land is not the only constraint. Labor shortage is another problem. We are seeing a shrinking workforce. There's a labor crunch across all sectors. Just then, I was with the Hotels Association. We had a meeting with the tourism board. I told them about the dire labor shortage in the hotel sector. The trade is worried that the workers cannot cope with the peak seasons in the summer and in winter. There's an enhanced supplementary labor scheme just announced by the government. The sector hoped it could meet our pressing needs, but the scheme won't come out until the third quarter. We don't have the details yet. Even with the enhanced scheme, the approval will take 3 months. So the scheme cannot come soon enough. I hope the government can announce the details of the enhanced scheme soon. That way, the trade can plan ahead and make up for lost time. Now, the imported labor scheme is just a band-aid. The cure lies in boosting the labor participation rate. Let's look at our birth rate. It's worrying. Back in 1991, 68,000 births. In 2022, just 32,000 births. This may have to do with COVID, but people are delaying marriage. There's a falling birth rate. We have an aging population. At this rate, our economy will suffer. We will also be in a compromised position to cope with an aging population. Now, the motion debate today shows the importance we attach to the population and labor force. Better child care will help put the minds of working parents at ease. Parents will see a stronger incentive to return to work. There's much room for improvement in our child care service. Last month, Mr. Chow Siu-chung moved a motion on unleashing the potential labor force. I touched on child care services tangentially back then. I now want to elaborate on this point. The Legislative Secretariat prepared the data insight on daycare for kids. I want to highlight a few points. For children younger than 2 years, we have a dire shortage of childcare places. Now, we had 82,000 such children, but there are only 2,027 care places. That's one place for every 40 kids. And the places are unevenly distributed across districts. In the Eastern District, one place for every 13 kids. But in Taipo, that's one place for every 271 kids. There's a dire shortage, unevenly distributed, long waited. Some people quip that they have to start queuing even before getting married and consummating the marriage. So there's a need to provide more places. Now I turn to the fees. Childcare service providers receive government funding, but parents have to fork out $5,000 to $6,000 per month for the childcare. That's costly for families. The government needs to consider more subsidies to ease the burden on families. Back in 2008, the government launched the home-based child carer scheme. Now, this is an alternative to child care centers, but there are just a small number of such carers, 1,815 such carers. Now, there are 3,085 young infants receiving such care. Again, the services are unevenly distributed. In Kowloon City, 515 such carers. In Tuen Mun, just 31 such carers. The shortage of the carers may have to do with the low incentive at $25 per hour, which is a nominal sum. I know the government is reviewing this. I hope we can see the results soon. The government can take targeted measures to address the problem. I so submit. Ms. Judy Chen. Thank you, President. We discussed all these matters about population, the birth rate, women's development, unleashing potential labor force. We discussed these points thoroughly. On child minding, this is again a matter that's front of mind for people. This comes up in the context of many social issues. Because this has implications for families, our next generation, and there's a long-standing shortage in the services, and this also has to do with other social issues. So I support Mr. Holden Chow's motion on strengthening child minding services and the amendments of other members. President, the UN has this Convention on Children's Rights, Article 18. It says that appropriate measures need to be taken so that children of working parents can access childcare services and other facilities. In Hong Kong, we have a low birth rate. There's a pressing need for childcare. Without swift action to improve childcare, it would be hard to ease the pressure on dual-income families. To offer better care for children, families are confronted with hard choices. Working women without support will find it hard to return to work after giving birth. Some women choose to leave the workplace for a long time to care for their kids. In other cases, parents are wary about having kids, which may compromise their career or add to the burden on their family, and they choose to forego having kids. There was a survey that came out about daycare for children. Back in 2021, the young infant, we had 82,000 such infants. But for child care centers catering to those younger than 3 years old, there were just 37,088 such places. For places for the 2-year-olds or younger, there were just 2,027 such places. Many members have commented on this point. In Taipo, you have the worst shortage. More than 3,000 infants, just 14 places. So the ratio is 1 to 271. So it's 1 slot for every 271 kids. In Taipo, it's 91 place for every 99 kids. In Two Moon, it's 1 to 90. This shows the services are unevenly distributed. Now I turn to the money issue. There's government funding, but the burden is heavy on parents. President, I'm pleased to hear that the chief executive made this remark. He said the government is looking into ways to incentivize or encourage childbirth, to encourage childbearing. Now, there are different factors at play when it comes to having kids. Housing, childbirth, education, flexibility at work, these are all factors at work. Support from the community is also a major factor. Without comprehensive child care, there will be a gap in family-friendly measures, and that will have implications for the workforce and the birth rate. We need to break the vicious cycle. To do that, the government needs to provide better child care. So we can look at home-based child carers. Let's train up more such carers, offer them better incentives. That way, we can address this long-standing problem that has deep implications for Hong Kong. I so submit. Thank you.
Ms. Elizabeth Quat. Thank you, Mr. President. I speak in support of Mr. Holden Chow's motion. He does care about the women, and child minding services is indeed a very important issue. I also support the other amendments proposed. I've been working for women for over 10 years, and I'm serving my third term as a legislator. Every year, I'm sure that I have been speaking on different women-related topics so that I can be the voice of the female population so that they can have quality of life. For women, I think we all want to have both a family and have a career. But then there are mothers there are people who want to become mothers, but then they have to give up the idea of having children because they cannot find a suitable person to take care of their children when they want to develop their own career. Sometimes women have to give up on their career development and stay home to take care of children. I've been told that there are female professionals who have to give up their career in their 30s despite having a bright future so as to look after the children. You have to look after the young babies, but even when your children go to primary school, it is also difficult to get somebody to stand in your place. So for a span of 7 to 8 years, you have to stay home and stay away from your work. So you need to become a full-time housewife, taking care of the family, taking care of the young children. When you want to join the labor force again, when your children go to secondary school, you usually get discriminated against because you will be accused of getting out of step with the society, you are outdated, and you cannot go back to your original position. In other words, you are losing out and you can no longer resume your career. Single mothers also face the same plight. They might have got a good career prospect, but then they have to take care on a full-time basis of their children, maybe 1 or 2 children and family. Even if you can get someone to look after the children, you need to go off work in time to pick up your children. Sometimes the workplace isn't that really family friendly. So there are women who would like to go to work and yet they don't have adequate child minding services to meet the needs. And that's why the labor participation rate is low for them. Now, the administration has been saying that we do have many child-minding places. Sometimes there is an oversupply in certain districts. So we've been told that there is an adequate supply. For years, I've been telling the administration that it is all because of the poor location of the child care centers. For the new territories, for new towns, in fact, we have got families with young children, and yet they don't have the number of places to meet the needs. Like in the case of Taiwan, there are only 12 places. How can you expect the demand to be met? When we compare ourselves with Singapore, well, in fact, we are lagging behind. They have a population of 5.64 million, and then they have got 650,000 children in the age band of 0 to 14. For those between 0 to 6 years old, they have got 180,000 places of childcare. For us, for those in the age group of 0 to 2, we have only got 2,000 places. Even if you add together other places, the total is only 37,000. We have got almost 900,000 young children or teenagers below the age of 14 in a population of 7 million. So the problem is indeed serious. We have got the Neighborhood Support Childcare Project, but then you never regard the carers as employees. You don't pay them a wage, so it is difficult to get people to become carers. And you need to have 28 carers in the project, overseen by 2 social workers. So it is not that easy to meet the requirements. I hope the Secretary will do more for us. Thank you. Does any other member wish to speak? If not, I'll invite Mr. Holden CHOW to speak on the amendments.
President, first of all, I'd like to thank the 15 members who have spoken on this motion. I also thank the 3 members for moving amendments. Mr. Hoey Lee focuses on helping women to realize themselves in the employment sector. Mr. Kenneth LEUNG talks about number of places in childcare centers for children under the age of 2. Mr. Wai-keung talks about improving the remuneration for home-based child carers. These are the focal points much covered by members today. I hope the Labor and Welfare Bureau has heard us. I believe that the Secretary has been doing a lot of work. That includes school services mentioned by a number of amenders, but whether it's sufficient is a different matter. For grassroots women, if you want them to work again, you need to give them childcare service. If they have a job, then it will improve their livelihood. That is much needed for grassroots women. This will also unleash women labor force. For after-school care services and childcare centers, can it cover public holidays? Because grassroots women work over holidays. I think in the short term, if you can extend the service, that would help a lot. Distribution of places is mentioned in the amendments. There is a mismatch. In Tuen Mun, in Tai Po, we see a large demand with more families moving in. They need childcare service, but the number of places in these areas are the fewest. I hope the administration will hear us and take action. I hear about that upcoming review. Once again, I thank members for speaking, and the 3 amenders will all work together, hoping to help more women. Thank you.
Secretary for Labour and Welfare. President, once again, I thank Mr. Holden CHOW for moving the motion, as well as Dr. Hoey Simon Lee, Mr. Wai-keung, and Mr. Kenneth LEUNG for their amendments. And also, a total of 16 members have spoken on today's motion. It shows that, like the government, members attach a lot of importance to childcare services. Like Mr. Holden CHOW said, we share the same goal. That is to offer childcare support to women, especially women from grassroots families. We want to offer them with convenient and affordable childcare services to unleash their potential. This will be beneficial to society as a whole and individual families. Now, I will convey your invaluable views to the government. I would also like to address on your suggestions. First, on day childcare centers. Now, there is a consensus that there are inadequate quotas for daycare service places. Members hope that the government would increase the number of service places. As I've mentioned just now, the government has been proactively increased the number of aided standalone CCCs to increase service quotas. And also the SWD is procuring suitable premises to allow NGOs to run social welfare facilities, including aided standalone CCCs. On long-term planning, we have incorporated the planning ratio for aided CCC places into the HKPSG. Now, for every 25,000 population, there should be 100 surface quotas. Now, since it has been incorporated into the HKPSG, in our future planning, the planning ratio will have to be implemented. Now, it will significantly increase the number of CCC places. Now, besides the planning ratio for developed areas, besides the HKPSG, we will also consider the demand and supply of childcare services in individual districts before we formulate plans. Besides surface places, we understand that we have to ensure that child care workers are equipped with the know-how and techniques. And also, parents have high expectations on the services provided by CCCs. In year 2019 and 20, we have enhanced the manning ratio for child care workers serving in aided day CCCs from 1 to 8 to 1 to 6 for children aged 0 to below 2, and from 1 to 14 to 1 to 11 for children aged 2 to below 3. Now we have enhanced the ratio so that children can get better care. On NSCCP, that is the Neighborhood Support Child Care Projects or home-based carers, since January 2020, the SWD has increased funding for service bodies for them to hire professional and supporting staff and enhance training for home-based carers. We have also enhanced the financial incentives for home-based carers to make it more attractive. Some members mentioned that we should enhance the training, allowances, and also service quality of home-based carers. In fact, to better respond to society's demand for daytime childcare services, the SWD is reviewing the service model and efficiency of the NSCCP, including the need to accredit home-based carers, enhancing their remuneration level, and enhance their service quality so as to attract more people to join the rank. We will announce the review findings in a timely manner. On after-school care services, the SWD has launched a series of measures to enhance after-school care services, and we have relaxed the income ceiling of low-income families for after-school care services. We have also increased the number of full fee waiving quota places. The subsidy amount has been adjusted according to inflation rates. Currently, every year, some 5,700 students and their families are benefited under the scheme. Now, we have also improved the means testing procedure to facilitate application of fee waivers for after-school care services. Families who are beneficiaries of financial assistance scheme for students, including school textbook assistance scheme, student travel subsidy scheme, and subsidy scheme for internet access charges, or the WFA and CSSA, are eligible for a full waiver without undergoing additional means test. Now, some members mentioned that the CS4A is going to launch the pilot scheme on school-based after-school care services to offer focused support for grassroots families. Needy primary students can stay behind after school to receive care and educational support. Now, our plan is to conduct the trial scheme in 5 districts, including Kowloon City, Yau Chim Mong, Sham Shui Po, Kwun Tong, Wai-keung, and Tsuen Wan. Some 50 primary schools will be invited to join the project. Now, each school will provide some 50 after-school care places. Some 3,000 students will be expected to benefit under the project. Now, for low-income families, we are going to provide this service for free. Now, for families with better financial means, we will charge them at a minimal fee. And also, several members, including Mr. Bill Tang, mentioned that the service hours of after-school care services should go beyond weekdays. There should be after-school care services over weekend and holiday as well. Now, under the pilot scheme, from Monday to Friday, we expect schools to stay open until at least 6 p.m. or even 7 p.m. Now, on Saturday and Sundays, schools are expected to provide 6 hours of after-school care services. Now, during school holidays or suspension of schools during the black rainstorm, the operating hours will be adjusted flexibly. We expect the NGOs to provide after-school care services in their own centers on these occasions. Now, the flexible arrangements will ensure parents that besides school days, over weekends and holidays, or even in inclement weather, their children will still be taken care of. Now, of course, this is just a pilot scheme. We want to look at how the scheme is working out, and then we will enhance it and expand the scope of the scheme. Some members mentioned pro-family policies or pro-family employment policies. We have been encouraging employers to implement family-friendly employment policies, including flexible working arrangements and also family holidays and support in life. Now, in fact, many employers in Hong Kong are offering a lot of family-friendly arrangements to cater for the employees' needs, so that employees can strike a balance between work and family. Besides, under the employment ordinance, the paternity leave and maternity leave have been extended to 5 days and 14 weeks in year 2019 and 2020. This is for father and mother to have more time to care for the newborn. Now, the Labor Department is formulating the Good Employer Charter 2024 to encourage employers to adopt good HR practices and implement family-friendly employment measures. Some members also mentioned the pressure faced by parents in caring for the child. Now, we understand that for families with welfare needs, they need extra support to handle the mental and financial pressures. So in formulating welfare policies and services, we have been focusing on strengthening and maintaining the functions of families. We are offering a series of supporting services to support carers, including the integrated family service centers. Emotional support would be offered, and referral services would be offered to cases according to their welfare needs, including caring services, residential services, and respite services, so that carers for children can catch a breath and rest. President, once again, I thank members who have put forward the views just now. The Labour and Welfare Bureau will continuously review the day childcare services and the after-school care services so as to better respond to the demand for these services. Thank you.
I now call upon Dr. Hoey Lee to move an amendment. President, I move my amendment. I propose the question to you that Dr. Hoey Lee's amendment be passed and Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Kwok Wai-keung, as Dr. Hoey Lee's amendment has been passed, you may move your further amendment. President, I move my further amendment. I propose the question to you that Mr. Kwok Wai-keung's further amendment be passed. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Kenneth LEUNG, as Mr. Hoey Lee and Mr. Kwok Wai-keung's amendments have been passed, you may move your further amendment. President, I move my further amendment. I propose the question to you that Mr. Kenneth LEUNG's further amendment be passed. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the amendment passed. Mr. Holden CHOW, you have used up all your time. I now put the question to you that Mr. Holden CHOW's motion as amended by Dr. Hoey Lee, Mr. Kwok Wai-keung, and Mr. Kenneth LEUNG be passed. Those in favor, please raise their hands. Those against, please raise their hands. I think the question is agreed by a majority of each of the two groups of members present. I declare the motion as amended passed. Meeting is adjourned.